Your doctor has almost certainly never sat you down and told you which snacks are good for your kidneys, and I want to tell you why, because the reason says everything. A kidney appointment in this country runs about 12 minutes. There is a billing code for prescription, a billing code for a scan, but there is no code at all for the 10 quiet minutes it would take to explain what you should be reaching for at 3 in the afternoon when your body is asking for something and you do not know what will hurt you and what might help. So that conversation is the first thing cut. Every time, in every office, in every city, not because the doctor does not care, but because the system does not pay for care that sounds like conversation. It only pays for care that sounds like a decision, and that leaves you standing in the kitchen at 3 o'clock with a cracker in your hand, wondering if the cracker is the enemy, wondering if the apple is safer, wondering if the peanut butter has too much of something you cannot even pronounce, and nobody, not one person in a white coat, has ever taken the time to walk you through it. So tonight, I am going to take those 10 minutes, and I am going to stretch them into the full half hour they should have always been, and at least half of what I am about to tell you, I would bet you have never heard from anyone. Before I say another word, I want to make you a promise about honesty, because you deserve one, and you have almost certainly not been given one from anybody trying to sell you something on the internet in the last 3 years. I am not going to tell you that any food on this planet is going to cure your kidneys. It will not. I am not going to tell you that any snack is going to reverse the years of pressure and sugar and the slow, quiet damage that carried you here. It will not. That would be a lie, and you have been lied to enough by television and by the internet and by strangers selling powders and bottles that cost more than your last copay. You have been sold miracle water and miracle tea and miracle root from the other side of the world by people who have never so much as read a lab report, and by the time you finish the bottle, your creatinine is still your creatinine, and your money is gone, and the only person who won that transaction was the one who cashed the check. I am not going to add another voice to that pile tonight. What I am going to tell you is quieter. It is smaller. It is more honest. The right food changes how hard your kidneys have to work to keep you alive from 1 hour to the next, and a kidney that works less hard is a kidney that holds on longer. That is the whole promise. It is not glamorous, it is not viral, it is not something you can put on the front of a supplement bottle in gold letters. It is just true. Everything I'm going to share tonight comes out of what the National Institutes of Health, the Mayo Clinic, the Cleveland Clinic, and the National Kidney Foundation have been saying for years to anyone patient enough to read it. I am going to sit here with you like an old friend at the end of the day and pass it along in plain language. This video is for you if your creatinine has been climbing past 1.2, 1.5, and someone has said the word stage 3 or stage 4 in your direction. It is for you if you are getting up 2 or 3 or 4 times a night and your partner is tired and you are tired and nobody has explained why. It is for you if you are 60 years old or 70 or 80 and you are just about done being talked over. Let me take 90 seconds and explain creatinine to you the way I wish somebody had explained it to me the first time I read a lab report, because I remember the first time I saw a creatinine number highlighted in yellow on a piece of paper handed to a family member of mine, and I remember the silence in the doctor's office after, and I remember driving home with that piece of paper on the passenger seat like it was a summons for a court date nobody had explained. Nobody had explained the word, nobody had explained the number, nobody had explained what any of it meant for the next Tuesday, or the next Christmas, or the next 20 years. So here it is, in plain English. Creatinine is a waste product. That is all it is. Your muscles burn a compound called creatine every second of every day just to move, just to breathe, just to hold you upright in a chair, and the leftover from that burning is creatinine. It has to go somewhere. Your kidneys take it out of your blood and pour it into your urine, and that is the end of the story for that particular molecule. Now, each kidney has about 1 million tiny filters inside of it called nephrons. 1 million on the right, 1 million on the left, 2 million filters that have been working for you every single second since before you were born, since before you had a name, since before your mother chose the color of the blanket she was going to bring you home from the hospital in. They have never asked for a day off, not once, and what wears them down, slowly, quietly over decades, is high blood pressure that scrapes at their walls, and high blood sugar that gums up their filters, and inflammation that sits inside your body like a low fever nobody ever mentioned. And here's the turn of the key that everything else tonight rests on. Your creatinine number reflects 2 things you are influencing every single day, 3 times a day, whether you know it or not. The first is how much waste your kidneys have to filter in the first place. The second is how much damage those filters keep taking from the inflammation you carry around inside you. Each of the 5 snacks I am about to share attacks one of those 2 levers. That is the whole secret. It is not a mystery. It is not magic. It is just knowing which lever you are pulling and pulling it on purpose. The first snack I want to put in your hand is red grapes, and I already know what half of you are thinking. Because I have been reading kidney research and talking to families for close to 20 years, and every time I mention fruit, somebody in the back of the room folds their arms and says, "But what about the sugar?" So let me answer that first. The sugar in a whole red grape is wrapped inside fiber and water, and a whole cluster of compounds that slow down how fast that sugar enters your blood. It is not the same sugar as the sugar in a can of soda. It is not the same sugar as the sugar in a glass of juice. It behaves differently. It arrives more slowly, and in exchange for a very small, very gentle rise in blood sugar, red grapes bring you three of the most quietly powerful compounds in the entire produce aisle. The first is resveratrol, mostly in the skin, which has been studied for its role in calming the kind of low-grade inflammation that scratches at kidney filters over the years. The second is quercetin, which is a flavonoid that has been looked at, again by researchers cited through the National Institutes of Health for its work in protecting the small blood vessels that feed the kidneys their oxygen. And the third is anthocyanins, the same deep purple pigments that give the skin its color, which act as antioxidants against the daily rusting that all of our tissues quietly go through. And here's the number that matters most to somebody in stage 3 or stage 4. Half a cup of red grapes contains about 88 milligrams of potassium. A single medium banana, the fruit that everybody with kidney disease has been told to be scared of, contains more than 400 milligrams. So a small handful of red grapes gives you 5 times less potassium than one banana, and it gives you all of those compounds on top. That is a bargain almost nobody has ever put in front of you at a doctor visit. The way to eat them, and this matters, is to keep the portion honest. Half a cup, that is about 15 to 20 grapes, roughly the size of the palm of your hand cupped loosely. Not a bowl, not a bunch, half a cup. Portion is where most people fall down, and it is not a moral failing, it is a pantry problem. If you leave a whole bag of grapes on the counter next to the recliner, you will eat the whole bag by the end of the ball game, and I do not blame you because they taste like little jewels. So do this instead. Wash the whole bag on Sunday. Split them into small glass containers, half a cup per container, 5 or 6 containers per bag. Line them up in the fridge. Now every time you reach for one, you have already portioned it out on Sunday when you had the willpower. Sunday you is the smart one. Wednesday afternoon you at 3 o'clock, tired and hungry and staring into the fridge, is not the one you want making the portion decision. Pair them with a small bit of protein or a small bit of a good fat because that steadies the sugar even more. A few grapes with a small handful of walnut halves. A few grapes with a slice of cheese for those who tolerate dairy. A few grapes next to a tablespoon of natural almond butter on a plain rice cracker. A few grapes next to the macadamias I am going to tell you about in a few minutes. 2 mistakes I want you to avoid. Do not swap grapes for grape juice. Juice has stripped the fiber and left the sugar naked, and it will spike your blood in a way that a whole grape simply will not. And do not swap grapes for raisins. Raisins are grapes with the water taken out, and when you take the water out, you concentrate everything, including the potassium. A quarter cup of raisins carries around 750 milligrams of potassium. That is nearly 10 times the potassium of the same amount of fresh grapes. For someone in stage 3 or 4 kidney disease, that swap is exactly the kind of small, invisible mistake that quietly stacks up over months and lands you back in the lab with the number nobody can explain. The second snack I want to hand you is egg whites, and I want to explain why in a way that will settle a fight that has been going on in your kitchen for years. There's a real dilemma with protein when you have kidney disease, and it is one of the most confusing corners of the whole conversation. Too much protein raises the amount of urea your kidneys have to filter, and urea is another waste product, and more waste means more work for filters that are already tired, but too little protein is worse. Too little protein leads to a condition called sarcopenia, which is a fancy word for the slow melting away of your muscle mass, and when a person over 60 loses muscle, they lose their balance, they lose their strength, they fall, they break bones, they end up in the hospital, and the kidney disease is no longer the main thing killing them, so the answer cannot be less protein. The answer has to be smarter protein, and this is where egg whites walk into the story like they were designed for it. Egg whites carry the single highest biological value of any protein humans have ever measured. What that phrase means in plain English is that the amino acid pattern in an egg white matches almost exactly what your body needs to build and repair itself. Almost nothing is wasted. Almost nothing is left over as extra nitrogen for your kidneys to clean up. And there is a second gift hiding here that almost nobody explains. Nearly all of the phosphorus in an egg is inside the yolk. When you take the yolk out, you strip the phosphorus out with it. So an egg white is one of the very few high-quality proteins on the planet that arrives at your kidneys almost naked without dragging phosphorus behind it. And phosphorus is one of the 3 things, along with potassium and sodium, that failing kidneys can no longer sweep out of the blood the way they used to. How you eat them is the whole game. 2 or 3 egg whites scrambled in a small pan with a whisper of good olive oil and no salt, or 3 egg whites hard-boiled, then the yolks lifted out with a spoon and given to the dog, or a small omelet made with 3 whites, some fresh chopped chives, some black pepper, and a squeeze of lemon at the end if you buy pasteurized egg whites in a carton because it is faster in the morning, and there is no shame in that. Please read the label. Some brands add salt and some do not. You are looking for a carton with fewer than 100 milligrams of sodium per serving and ideally lower than that. And the last mistake I want to keep you from making is thinking one egg white is enough. It is not. One egg white delivers about 3.5 grams of protein, and for a person over 60 who is trying to hold on to muscle, the target for a snack-sized dose of protein sits closer to 10 to 15 grams. That is 3 to 4 egg whites. Not 1, not 2, 3 or 4. Prepare them once in the morning and keep them in the fridge and eat them cold with a little pepper when the afternoon hits and you feel your energy sag. That is a snack that feeds your muscles and asks almost nothing of your kidneys in return. And there is nothing else in the American grocery store that does both jobs quite that cleanly. Now I want to tell you about the third snack, and I want you to sit down for this one because it is the food that nearly every kidney handout you have ever been given tells you to cross off the list, and I'm going to tell you to put it back on your list. Potatoes. Yes, regular white potatoes. The ones you grew up with, the ones your mother mashed, the ones you have not touched in 3 years because a nurse handed you a printed sheet with a red X through them. There is a way to prepare potatoes that pulls out a significant portion of the potassium before it ever reaches your plate, and this technique has a name, and the name is leaching, and it has been quietly written about by dietitians at the National Kidney Foundation and at the Cleveland Clinic for years, and almost nobody has ever taught it to you in a way you could actually remember and use. So I'm going to teach it to you now, slowly, the way I would teach it to my own mother, because it is worth learning once and using for the rest of your life. Potassium is water soluble. Say that with me. Water soluble. That means potassium will leave a potato if you give it enough time and enough water to leave into. Here is exactly how you do it. First, you peel the potato completely. The skin is where a lot of the potassium and phosphorus are concentrated, and for someone with kidney disease, the skin is not your friend no matter what the health magazines say. Second, you slice the potato as thin as you reasonably can, about 3 millimeters, which is roughly the thickness of 2 nickels stacked on top of each other. The thinner you slice, the more surface area the water touches, and the more potassium can escape. Third, you put those slices into a large bowl of warm water, not cold water, warm water. Warm water pulls potassium out faster than cold, and it does it without cooking the potato. Fourth, you let them sit in that warm water for at least 4 hours. And here's the step almost every recipe forgets. In the middle of that soak, at about the 2-hour mark, you pour off the water, which is now full of the potassium your kidneys did not want, and you refill the bowl with fresh warm water and let them soak the rest of the time. 2 soaks in fresh water pull out more than 1 long soak in the same water, because the water gets saturated and eventually cannot hold anymore. Fifth, when the soak is done, you drain the potatoes, rinse them one more time under the tap, and cook them in fresh, unsalted water. Not the soaking water. Never the soaking water. That water goes down the drain. When you do this correctly, the research reviewed by the National Kidney Foundation suggests you can remove somewhere between 30 and 50% of the potassium that started in that potato. That is a food you had crossed off walking back onto your plate. A few practical tips before I move on. Because the leaching technique is the single most useful thing in this video, and I do not want you to walk away from it fuzzy on any part of it. If you can leach in the morning before you leave for the day, do that. Peel and slice the potatoes at breakfast, drop them into the bowl, cover the bowl with a plate, and by the time you sit down to dinner, they have soaked all day, and you can drain and cook them in 20 minutes. If mornings are chaos, do it the other direction. Peel and slice them after lunch on a Saturday, soak them through the afternoon, cook them for Saturday dinner, and eat the leftovers cold on Sunday as a small kidney-friendly potato salad tossed with a spoon of olive oil, a squeeze of lemon, and fresh dill. That is a snack that would have gotten you thrown out of every kidney handout ever printed, and you built it with your own hands out of a potato you were told to fear. 2 mistakes I want to save you from. Do not try to shortcut the leaching by microwaving the potato instead of soaking it. Microwaving does not pull potassium out. It just cooks the potato with all of its potassium still inside. Leaching only works with time and water. There are no shortcuts. There is no version of this technique that takes 15 minutes. Anybody on the internet telling you there is guessing, and you cannot afford to guess. And do not fall for the myth that sweet potatoes are automatically the healthier choice for a person with kidney disease. Sweet potatoes carry more than 500 milligrams of potassium in a single medium-sized one, which is often higher than a regular white potato. And the leaching technique does not work on them the same way because their structure holds the potassium differently. Sweet potatoes are a wonderful food for many people, especially people with healthy kidneys who are trying to steady their blood sugar. They are simply not the automatic kidney upgrade the internet keeps calling them. The internet does not know your labs. I am asking you to trust the potato that has been cooked for you your whole life, prepared the slow, honest way, over the trend food that a wellness account with a filter has told you is better without ever having read a nephrology chart. Before I keep going, and I mean this, I want to pause for one moment and ask you a small favor. If any of what I have said so far has helped, if any of it has been the first time somebody has explained one of these things to you in plain language, would you take take a second and let me know your age in the comments down below, and if you happen to know your latest creatinine number or your latest GFR number, you can share that too, not for me. For everybody else scrolling past who is 65 and scared and looking to see if anybody else out there is walking the same road they are walking, a quick tap on the like button also helps YouTube know to share this video with more people over 60 who have been staring at lab numbers that nobody in a white coat has taken 5 minutes to explain to them. That is the whole ask. Now let me get back to the food, because we still have two of the best ones to cover, and the story I want to tell you at the end is one you will not want to miss. The fourth snack is cauliflower, and I know what you are thinking, because cauliflower has become the food that vegan cookbooks stretched into an entire national joke, and half the country is now tired of hearing about it. So let me tell you why. For a person over 60 with a rising creatinine, cauliflower is not a trend, it is a tool. Cauliflower is one of the very few vegetables that is low in potassium, low in phosphorus, and low in sodium, all three at once. 1 cup of raw cauliflower florets contains only about 320 milligrams of potassium, which is significantly lower than most leafy greens and dramatically lower than a potato that has not been leached. On top of that, cauliflower carries a real dose of vitamin C, which is important for a body that is under any kind of chronic inflammatory load, and it carries folate, which supports the red blood cell production that many people with later stage kidney disease start to struggle with. And there is one more piece here that I have to be careful about because I promised you honesty. Cauliflower belongs to a family of vegetables called cruciferous vegetables, alongside broccoli and cabbage and Brussels sprouts, and these vegetables contain a compound called indole-3-carbinol, which the body converts into a second compound called diindolylmethane, often shortened to DIM. Research through the National Institutes of Health has looked at DIM for its role in calming inflammation through a signaling pathway inside your cells called NF-kappa B. Now, I have to be honest with you. The direct research on cauliflower specifically for kidney disease is still early. I'm not going to sit here and tell you that cauliflower has been proven to save your kidneys. What I will tell you, and this is the honest through line, is that reducing chronic low-grade inflammation is one of the fundamental strategies for slowing the progression of kidney disease, and the National Institutes of Health has been clear about that for years. Cauliflower is one of the most affordable, most available, most kidney-friendly ways to nudge that inflammation down, one meal at a time. That is not a promise of a cure. It is a real quiet, steady advantage that most people over 60 are simply not being told about. Now let me give you the preparation that will change the way you eat this vegetable for the rest of your life. Because raw florets get boring in a week and steamed cauliflower has all the personality of wet cardboard. It is called kidney rice, and it is the single most useful thing you will learn from this whole video for weeknight dinners. You take a whole head of cauliflower and cut it into florets. You put those florets into a food processor and pulse them, just pulse them until they look like the size of grains of rice. If you do not have a food processor, a box grater on the medium side works too. Now here's the part that changes everything. You put that riced cauliflower into a microwave-safe bowl. No water, no oil, nothing. You cover it with a plate and you microwave it on high for exactly 2 minutes. What comes out looks and eats almost exactly like a bowl of white rice. Fluffy, warm, mild. You dress it with a squeeze of fresh lemon juice, a little bit of olive oil, and any fresh herb you have on hand. Parsley, chives, basil, fresh thyme leaves stripped off the stem, no salt. The herbs and the lemon do all the work. You can eat it as a side to your egg whites. You can eat it as the base of a small bowl with a few grapes on the side. You can eat it warm at lunch, cold at 3 in the afternoon, or as a bed under a small piece of grilled fish at dinner. It is quiet, cheap, and it takes the kind of pressure off your kidneys that a plate of white rice never will. One mistake to avoid: do not buy the frozen bags of cauliflower florets that come already mixed with cheese sauce or seasoning packets. Those are engineered convenience foods, and they arrive loaded with sodium and, worse, with hidden phosphate additives that failing kidneys absorb almost completely, unlike the natural phosphorus in real food. Read the back of the bag. If there is more than one word on the ingredient list, put it back. Cauliflower. That is the only word you should see. If you cannot find fresh cauliflower at your grocery store, plain frozen florets in a bag with no sauce and no seasoning are perfectly fine. Just steam them from frozen, drain well, and use them the same way. A little bit of frozen convenience is a small price to pay for keeping this snack in your weekly rotation, and a bag of plain frozen florets keeps in the freezer for months, which is a kindness to anybody living alone or shopping only once a week. The fifth snack I want to give you is macadamia nuts, and I need to lead with this because it will surprise you. For 20 years, everybody with kidney disease has been told, in a sweeping sentence with no nuance, avoid all nuts. That advice is out of date. It was out of date the day it was written. Not all nuts are the same, and not all nuts sit on your kidneys the same way. Let me show you what I mean. An ounce of almonds, which for a lot of people over 60 has been the default default healthy nut for years. Carries about 200 milligrams of potassium and about 130 milligrams of phosphorus. An ounce of macadamia nuts, the same weight, carries only about 104 milligrams of potassium and only about 53 milligrams of phosphorus. That is roughly half the potassium and less than half the phosphorus in the exact same amount of food. For a person in stage 3 or 4 kidney disease, that is not a small difference. That is the difference between a nut you can safely enjoy every afternoon and a nut you have to be careful with. And it gets better. Macadamia nuts are the single richest source of monounsaturated fat of any nut on the planet. That is the same family of fat you find in extra virgin olive oil, the same oleic acid that the Mediterranean diet has been built around for decades, the same fat that the American Heart Association has been pointing to for years as one of the fats that seems to help hold cardiovascular disease at bay. And this is the piece I want you to sit with for 1 minute, because it is important. Kidney disease and heart disease travel together. They travel together always. They travel together like two neighbors who share the same fence. Research reviewed by the National Kidney Foundation and echoed by the American Heart Association has been consistent for years on one hard fact. A person with chronic kidney disease is more likely to die of a cardiovascular event, a heart attack, or a stroke than they are to die of kidney failure itself. That means every food choice you make for your kidneys is also a food choice for your heart, and every food choice for your heart is also a food choice for your kidneys, and the two conversations are not separate. Macadamia nuts sit almost perfectly in the middle of that overlap. They protect the blood vessels that feed your kidneys their oxygen, and they protect the blood vessels that feed your heart its oxygen, and they do it while asking almost nothing of your filtering system in return. That is a rare food. How you eat them matters. 10 to 12 macadamia nuts. Not a handful, not a bowl. 10 to 12. That is roughly 1 ounce, and it is the honest portion because macadamias are dense, and dense means calories, and you are not trying to gain weight. Buy them raw and unsalted or dry roasted with no oil and no salt. The bags that call themselves honey roasted or savory or sea salted are all coated in things your kidneys do not need. Read the label. One ingredient. Macadamia nuts. That is the whole list. And here's a small satisfying trick that combines two of tonight's snacks. 10 macadamia nuts with 4 or 5 red grapes from snack number 1. The fat in the macadamia slows down the sugar in the grapes. The grapes give you the polyphenols and the anthocyanins. The macadamias give you the healthy fat and the low potassium protein. Together, they are one of the most kidney-friendly and heart-friendly afternoon snacks you can build for less than $1. And one small curiosity that always makes people laugh at the end of this conversation. Macadamia nuts are toxic to dogs, so if you drop one on the kitchen floor and the dog looks interested, pick it up before he does. That is a real thing, and it has nothing to do with your kidneys, but I promised I would treat you like a friend. So I am telling you. I want to tell you a story now. I want you to picture a man named Robert. Robert is 69 years old. He worked as a mechanic for 42 years in a small town outside of Louisville, Kentucky. He raised 2 daughters. He buried a brother. He kept the same wife for 46 years. And 2 years ago, he walked into a nephrology office with a creatinine of 1.7, a diagnosis of stage 3 kidney disease, high blood pressure going back to his 40s, and type 2 diabetes going back to his 50s. The thing that broke him, though, was not the numbers on the lab sheet. It was that he had stopped driving to visit his oldest daughter, who lives about an hour and a half away in Nashville, because he was getting up 3 times every single night to go to the bathroom, and by the time morning came, he was too tired to get behind the wheel. And by the time afternoon came, his eyes were already heavy, and he had not seen his grandkids in almost 8 months. That was the loss he actually cared about. He and his wife, whose name was Margaret, sat down at their kitchen table one evening under the old pendant light that had been hanging there since 1982, and they made a list of the 5 snacks I have just walked you through. They wrote them down on the back of an envelope that had come from the electric company. Red grapes, egg whites, bleached potatoes, cauliflower, macadamias. Margaret went to the grocery store the next morning, drove the same route she had driven for 30 years, and bought every single item on that list, including a small food processor she had been meaning to replace, and a big glass bowl for the potato soak. She learned to leach potatoes on a Tuesday afternoon, standing at her kitchen sink with the water running warm, and the small kitchen radio playing the local station in the background, and she called her sister in Ohio to complain about how long it took, and then she did it anyway, because that was the kind of woman she was. She learned to make kidney rice in the food processor her daughter had gotten her 3 Christmases ago and never used. She hard-boiled a dozen eggs on Sunday, and popped the yolks out and put the whites in a container in the fridge for the week, labeled with a small piece of masking tape. Robert kept a small dish of macadamias by the recliner where he watched the evening news, and he kept a small bowl of red grapes on the kitchen counter, washed and ready, and he ate them without thinking about it, the way he used to eat crackers. He said once that he had not realized how much of his eating was about having something in his hand while the television was on. When the something in his hand became grapes and macadamias instead of pretzels and chips, the numbers on his labs did not change overnight, but the story of his afternoons did. Now here's where I have to be careful with my words, because I promised you honesty at the beginning of this video, and I am am not going to break that promise now, no matter how much a happier ending would help this story. Robert's creatinine did not go back to normal. It did not. That is not what happened. What happened was that his creatinine stopped climbing. It leveled off. It held steady month after month at right around 1.7, 1.8, and it stayed there for the next year and a half. His night trips to the bathroom dropped from 3 to 1. He started sleeping through most of the night, and Margaret started sleeping too, because when he was up, she was up. 6 months in, he drove to Nashville. He took his own truck. He saw his grandkids for the first time in almost a year. He came home tired but happy, and he told Margaret that he had forgotten how much he missed being useful to somebody. That was the win. Not a number that went down. A life that came back. And when I asked Robert, in the way I get to ask people when I am on the phone with them for a research conversation, what the biggest change was, he did not say the food. He did not say the potatoes or the macadamias. He said the biggest change was that for the first time since his diagnosis, he stopped feeling like a passenger in his own body. He stopped feeling like the disease was something happening to him and started feeling like there was something he could do about it every single day, 3 times a day, at breakfast and at 3 in the afternoon and at dinner. And that mental shift, that quiet reclaiming of agency, is the thing I cannot put a lab number on, but I have watched it change more lives than any prescription I have ever seen written. I want you to hold that story next to another story I have watched too many times to count. The story of a person who hears every word I have just said, nods along, promises themselves they are going to buy the grapes and learn the leaching and switch to egg whites, and then walks out of the house the next morning, drives past the grocery store, tells themselves they will start on Monday, and a year later walks back into the nephrologist's office with a creatinine number that has climbed instead of held. The difference between Robert and that second person is not intelligence. It is not willpower. It is not moral character. It is one thing, and one thing only. Robert made one small change, one time, this week. While the conversation was still fresh in his ears, he did not try to change all 5 snacks at once. He did not try to overhaul his entire kitchen. He and Margaret picked one. They picked the grapes because they were the easiest to keep on the counter, and they started there, and by the time the grapes were a habit, the egg whites felt easier, and by the time the egg whites were a habit, the cauliflower felt doable, and so on, one small brick laid on top of another, until 3 months later, they were living a different life without ever having had to make a big dramatic decision. I want to tell you the one thing that ties all 5 of these snacks together, because if you understand this, you will understand everything else about eating for your kidneys for the rest of your life, and you will stop needing to memorize lists, and you will stop needing to look things up on your phone in the grocery store aisle while somebody with a cart pushes past you. You will just know every single one of these 5 snacks does one thing in common. Every one of them reduces the amount of work your kidneys have to do in a given 24-hour period. That is the whole game, not the whole game of nutrition, not the whole game of health. The whole game of eating for kidneys that are tired and getting more tired. Egg whites deliver protein that leaves almost no waste behind, so your kidneys have less urea to sweep out. Red grapes and cauliflower calm the low-grade inflammation that has been quietly scraping at the walls of your filters for years, so the filters take less new damage. Leached potatoes, prepared the slow, honest way, give you back a food you love with a fraction of the potassium load, so your body does not have to try to sweep out a mineral it can no longer handle. Macadamia nuts protect the small blood vessels that carry oxygen to the kidney itself, so the tissue stays healthier and does its job with less strain, and every preparation trick, the leaching, the no salt, the whole fruit instead of the juice, the raw nut instead of the flavored one, exists for one reason, to keep potassium and phosphorus and sodium from stacking up in a system that can no longer sweep them out the way it used to. That is the whole picture. There is no magic, there is no secret, there is only a set of small, boring, honest choices that add up, and this is the piece I really want you to walk away with tonight. Your creatinine number is not just a verdict on the damage that has already been done. That is how most people read it, and it is why so many people over 60 spiral into fear when they see it climb. Your creatinine number is also a photograph of how hard your kidneys are working today, right now, this afternoon, and that part of the picture, that piece of the number, has your fingerprints all over it, 3 times a day, every single day, at every meal and every snack. That is the part you get to influence. That is the part the doctor cannot influence for you in a 12-minute appointment. That is the part you get to take home. So here's what I want you to actually do. Not next month, not on Monday, today, or tomorrow morning at the latest. Take a small piece of paper or the back of an envelope like Margaret did and write down the 5 snacks: red grapes, egg whites, bleached potatoes, cauliflower for kidney rice, macadamia nuts. That is your grocery list. Pick just one to start with, not all 5. One, whichever one feels the easiest to fit into your normal week. For most people I've talked to, that is the grapes, because a bowl of grapes on the counter takes no cooking and no thinking, but if you already love eggs, start with the whites. If you already miss potatoes, learn the leaching this weekend and start there. Whichever one you pick, buy it this week. Before the details of this video video start to fade in your memory. Buy it while the ideas are still sharp. Cut the salt out of however you prepare it and use fresh herbs and lemon and pepper and olive oil instead, because your kidneys can take a break from sodium and your taste buds will actually thank you within about 10 days once they wake back up. Keep every single appointment with your nephrologist, everyone. If they change the appointment on you, do not skip it. Reschedule it that same afternoon. The waiting list to get back in with a specialist can run 6 to 8 weeks in most of the country right now, and 6 weeks is a long time to sit at home with your questions piling up on the kitchen counter next to the mail. Know your own numbers, know your creatinine, know your GFR, know your potassium, know your phosphorus if they are checking it. Know your blood pressure, morning and evening, and write it in a small notebook you keep by the coffee pot. Ask for a copy of your labs after every visit and keep them in a folder at home, a real paper folder in a real drawer, and watch the trend over months, not the single number on any one day. A single number on a single day means almost nothing. Your creatinine can move up or down by a small amount just because of how hydrated you were the morning of the test, or how much red meat you had at dinner the night before, or whether you had a hard workout the day before the draw. A trend over 6 months tells you the truth, and when you sit in that 12-minute appointment, bring a written list of your 3 most important questions on a piece of paper. Because the moment you sit down across from a doctor in a hurry, your questions will disappear from your head, they always do, and the paper will be the only thing that saves them. Do not apologize for the paper. Do not apologize for the questions. That paper is what you paid the copay for. Now I need to give you one warning, and I need to give it with the weight it deserves, because if I do not, I am not being honest with you. If you are in stage 4 kidney disease or stage 5 kidney disease, or if your nephrologist has ever told you that your potassium has been running high on a recent lab, you cannot change your diet based on a video on YouTube. Not this one, not any other one. In advanced kidney disease, potassium and protein have to be adjusted to the exact function you have left, not to a general rule, and getting your potassium wrong is genuinely dangerous. It is a heart rhythm problem. It is not a small thing. What you can do, and what I hope you will do, is take this video, or your notes from this video, or the list of 5 snacks scratched onto the back of an envelope, and bring it with you to your next appointment with your nephrologist, or with a registered dietitian who specializes in kidney disease, and build the personalized version of this plan together with them. That is the honest path. I am not your doctor. I am a person who has spent nearly 20 years reading kidney research and talking to families and trying to translate what the National Institutes of Health in the Cleveland Clinic and the National Kidney Foundation already know into language that reaches you at your kitchen table. The doctor is still the doctor. Do not skip that step. Do not stop any medication. Do not reduce any dose. Do not change anything your doctor prescribed based on anything I said tonight, no matter how much sense it seems to make in the quiet of your own living room. Talk to your kidney doctor before changing anything. That is the rule that has to sit above every other rule. Food supports your kidneys. Food helps take the load off. Food can help hold your numbers steady when it is chosen carefully and prepared honestly. But food does not replace the medicine on your kitchen counter, and it does not replace the specialist whose job it is to watch your labs and adjust your care. What food does is give you back a seat at the table of your own health. It gives you something to do at 3 in the afternoon that is not just waiting for the next appointment. And with that said, I want to leave you with a sentence I hope you carry to bed tonight and into the kitchen tomorrow morning. A rising creatinine number is not a sentence you sit back and accept. Tonight, you have 5 real, affordable, ordinary grocery store snacks that can lift some of the load off the 2 million tiny filters that have worked for you every single second of your life since before you were born. They have never asked you for anything. Tonight, for the first time in a long time, you get to start working for them. If you buy even one of these 5 snacks at the store this week, you will have already done more for your kidneys than most people ever do in a year of watching videos like this one. You will have taken a piece of knowledge that has been sitting locked inside medical journals for decades and put it to work in your own kitchen, on your own counter, in your own hands. That is not a small thing. That is exactly the kind of small deliberate act that adds up over months into a different set of lab numbers and a different set of afternoons. If this half hour explained something that a 12-minute appointment never had time for, please tap the like button because it genuinely helps YouTube share this with the next person over 60 who is scared and scrolling for answers at 11 o'clock at night. Alone in the kitchen, with the house quiet and the lab report still on the counter under the phone bill. And in the comments, tell me your age, and if you know it, tell me your latest creatinine or GFR number. Not for me, for the person coming behind you who needs to know they are not walking this road by themselves. I will be reading every comment I can get to. Take care of yourself, take care of those 2 million tiny filters that have never once let you down, and I will see you in the next one.